I was sitting in my car on the next street over, watching the lights in her third-floor apartment flick on and off. It was 10:17 p.m. I told myself twice that I'd leave, that this was stupid, but my hand never turned the key. My phone was on my thigh, still open to her last text. Meetin' ran late. Don't wait up. I kept rereading it like it was written by someone else. Just friendly. That was her go-to line whenever I asked who she was texting so much at night. You're insecure. I accepted that because I trusted her more than my own doubts. But tonight I wasn't here because of a feeling. I was here because of something specific I couldn't unsee. I looked down at the parking lot again, and that's when I noticed the one thing that absolutely didn't belong there. Before that night, my life was painfully normal. We'd been together a little over 9 years, married for 6. No dramatic origin story. We met through mutual friends, bonded over dumb inside jokes and long walks because neither of us could afford Uber back then. She was steady, organized, the kind of person who returned library books early. I wasn't the jealous type, and she knew it. That was kind of our unspoken deal. I trusted her, and in return, she never gave me a reason not to. We both worked full-time. I was in logistics, nothing glamorous, just long hours and predictable stress. She worked in marketing for a mid-sized company, hybrid schedule, lots of quick calls and last-minute changes. We didn't have kids yet. We talked about it casually, like something that would just happen when the timing felt right. Our routines were boring in a good way. Grocery shopping on Sundays, takeout Fridays, one shared calendar on the fridge that we almost never checked because we were always where we said we'd be. I'd never gone through her phone, not once. Not because I was trying to prove something, but because it honestly never crossed my mind. If she went out with coworkers, I stayed home. If she traveled for work, I watered the plants and sent her photos of the cat doing nothing. I didn't need updates. I didn't need check-ins. I wasn't that guy. She used to say she loved that about me, said it made her feel trusted, said it made us different. That's why, when things started to feel off, my first instinct wasn't suspicion, it was self-correction. I told myself I was reading into things. I told myself this was what long-term relationships look like. Nothing is wrong, I remember thinking more than once. You're just tired. And honestly, for a while, that explanation worked. The first crack was small enough that I almost missed it. She started taking her phone with her everywhere. Bathroom, shower, even when she went to grab the mail. It wasn't dramatic. No hiding the screen, no sudden passcodes, just a quiet change in habit. When I noticed, I felt stupid for noticing. People scroll, people text. Just friendly, she said once when I asked who kept messaging so late. She didn't sound defensive. She sounded bored that I even asked. The second thing was her schedule. She'd always had a loose work calendar, but suddenly everything was fluid. Late meetings that popped up an hour before dinner, coffee runs that turned into 3-hour gaps. One night she said, I told you this week would be crazy, and I realized I didn't remember her telling me that at all. I checked the fridge calendar later, nothing written. I told myself I probably forgot. You're insecure, I could almost hear her say, even though she hadn't yet. The third crack was physical, and that one stuck with me. She started getting dressed differently for work. Not better, not worse, just intentional. New shoes, perfume she hadn't worn in years. When I joked about it, she laughed and said, Am I not allowed to look good now? I dropped it immediately. The last thing I wanted was to be the guy policing his wife's clothes. Still, the phrase "this feels off" kept looping in my head, even though I couldn't explain why. The last thing should have been nothing. It really should have. One evening, I walked into the kitchen and she flinched. Not jumped, not startled, just a tiny sharp pause, like she'd been caught mid-thought. Her phone was face down on the counter. She smiled right after, too fast, and said, "You scared me." I apologized. Later that night, lying in bed, I replayed that moment over and over. It didn't match the situation. It felt rehearsed. "It's nothing," I told myself. "Stop digging." After that, little comments started slipping out of her that didn't sit right. "You wouldn't get it. It's just work stuff. Why are you making this a thing?" One time when I asked if she'd be late again, she sighed and said, "I can't keep reporting my every move." That one stung, not because it was harsh, but because it reframed me. Suddenly, I wasn't a husband asking a question. I was a problem. I remember thinking very clearly, I don't like who I'm becoming. I didn't like the mental notes. I didn't like the quiet math in my head. I especially didn't like how easy it was for her to shut it down. "Nothing is going on. You're reading into it. Please don't start this." I believed her, or at least I wanted to. But once those cracks were there, I couldn't stop noticing how carefully everything else seemed to be held together. After that, the pattern stopped being subtle. It still wasn't loud, but it was consistent, and consistency is what messes with your head. She started stepping outside to take calls. Not every time, just enough that I noticed. When I asked who it was, she'd say a name I recognized from work, or sometimes just a client. If I pushed even a little, the tone changed. "Why are you interrogating me?" That word stuck. Interrogating. Like I was crossing a line just by asking. One night she came home later than she said she would. Not hours later. 20 minutes. That should have meant nothing. But when she walked in, she went straight to the bathroom without saying hi. Door closed. Shower on. I stood in the kitchen holding a plate I'd already made for her, thinking, this doesn't add up. When she finally came out, she acted completely normal. Too normal. She kissed my cheek and said, "Long day." I nodded, and that was it. Still, my brain wouldn't let it go. Something felt edited. Then there was the car. She started parking farther down the street instead of in our usual spot. Said it was because construction made it tight. I checked the street the next morning. No cones, no signs, just open space. When I mentioned it, she laughed and said, "You're really paying attention lately." Not joking, not accusing, just stating it. "Am I not supposed to?" I almost asked. I didn't. A week later, I saw a name pop up on her phone while it was charging on the counter. Just a name. No message preview. I recognized it, but not from her stories. That was new. When she came back into the room, she flipped the phone face down without thinking. That's when the phrase hit me hard and fast. This isn't about one thing. It was about all of it stacked together. Every small moment suddenly had weight. I tried to reset, took her out to dinner, asked about her day, listened. She was there physically, but something was missing. She kept checking her phone, then apologizing for checking her phone, then doing it again. At one point, she smiled at a message and caught herself. The smile vanished instantly. "Work?" I asked. She nodded too quickly. "Always work," she said. The way she said it felt like a shield. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and thought, I don't recognize this version of us. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was confusion. The worst kind. The kind where you don't know if you're being lied to or slowly trained to stop asking. Stop overthinking. You're making things weird. Why can't you just trust me? Each sentence landed like a warning, not reassurance. The next day, she told me she had to stay late again. No eye contact this time. Just grabbed her bag and said, "Don't wait up," like it was nothing. That phrase echoed in my head all evening. Don't wait up. I did anyway. At 9:30, I checked my phone. No updates. At 10 o'clock, still nothing. At 10:15, I felt that familiar tightness in my chest and thought, if I ask, I'm the problem. That realization scared me more than any late night ever could. When she finally texted, it was short, no detail, no apology, just confirmation. Still tied up. I typed a reply, erased it, typed another, erased that too. In the end, I sent, okay. That was the moment I knew something had shifted, not because of what she did, but because of what I stopped doing. I stopped feeling like I was allowed to question my own marriage. Later, standing by the window, watching headlights pass, I thought, if this is nothing, why does it feel like everything? I didn't have proof. I didn't have accusations. All I had were unanswered questions and a growing sense that whatever was happening didn't need my permission anymore. And that's when I realized I wasn't calm. I was being managed. The turning point wasn't dramatic. There was no explosion, no screaming match, no moment where I caught her in a lie she couldn't dodge. It was quieter than that and somehow heavier. It happened on a Tuesday, the kind of day you forget as soon as it's over. She left her laptop open on the dining table that morning. That alone wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the way she closed it when she realized I was behind her. Too fast, too deliberate, like a reflex she'd practiced. She smiled right after and said, "Sorry, Habit." Then she added, "Work stuff is a mess right now." I nodded like I always did, but something in me didn't settle. The phrase, "nothing is going on," popped into my head, uninvited, and this time it didn't soothe me. It felt like a script. Later that day, I tried to talk to her. Not accuse, not confront, just talk. I said, "You feel kinda distant lately." That was it. That was my whole crime. She sighed and leaned back in her chair and said, "Can we not do this?" When I asked what this was, she said, "This tone, this suspicion." That word again, suspicion. Like I'd already crossed a line I didn't remember stepping over. "You're reading into things," she added. "You always do when you're stressed." That one stuck. It rewrote the problem as me. That night she fell asleep quickly, facing away from me. I lay there staring at the back of her head, thinking about how easy it had become for her to shut things down. Just friendly. "You're insecure. Why are you making this a thing?" Each phrase felt less like reassurance and more like a barrier. I realized I wasn't trying to catch her. I was trying to calm myself down. I wanted something solid, something boring, something that would let me say, "Okay, I'm wrong." The next day, I did something I'd never done before. I checked our shared phone plan, not messages, not content, just usage. I told myself it was practical. I told myself I was being ridiculous. I also told myself I wouldn't dig any further, no matter what I saw. This wasn't about proof. This was about quieting the noise in my head. If there's nothing there, I remember thinking, I'll drop it. For good. As the page loaded, my heart wasn't racing. That surprised me. I felt strangely calm, like I'd already accepted that something had changed, and this was just a formality. I wasn't looking for betrayal. I was looking for permission to stop feeling crazy. Please, I thought, staring at the screen, let this be boring. That's when I noticed the pattern. The data itself was bland. Rows of numbers, dates, times, nothing emotional about it. That almost made it worse. One number showed up over and over again, always in the evenings, always outside normal work hours. Long calls, not texts, calls. Some nights 10 minutes, some nights 40, a few nights over an hour. It wasn't every day, but it was regular enough to form a rhythm. I stared at it longer than I should have, waiting for my brain to come up with a normal explanation. Probably a coworker, I told myself. Some project, some crisis. Still, I checked the name attached to the number. It wasn't from her company. It wasn't saved in my contacts. It wasn't familiar at all. I didn't panic. That's the part people always expect. I didn't slam the laptop shut or feel my chest tighten. I just felt cold, like the room had dropped a few degrees. I clicked through the months. The calls lined up with the nights she came home late, the nights she stepped outside, the nights she said, "Don't wait up." That phrase hit different now. This wasn't one weird week. It had been going on for a while. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. This doesn't mean anything by itself, I thought. You're connecting dots because you're already anxious. But then I noticed something else. The calls stopped abruptly whenever I was home early. Days I worked from home, nothing. Days I was traveling for work, the calls spiked. That's when the phrase landed in my head, heavy and clear. This isn't random. I leaned back in my chair and just sat there staring at the wall. No anger, no adrenaline, just a slow understanding that whatever this was, it was being managed around me. That night she came home smiling. Too much energy for how late it was. She dropped her bag and said, "You wouldn't believe today," and started talking about work like everything was normal. I nodded in the right places, asked the right questions. All the while I was listening for something else. A slip, a pause, nothing. She was good, really good. At one point she laughed and said, "You're so quiet tonight." I shrugged and said I was tired. She kissed my forehead and went to shower. While she was gone, I checked her phone. Not messages, not apps, just contacts. The number wasn't saved. That detail mattered more than I expected. If it was just work, why not save it? If it was harmless, why keep it floating? The answer felt obvious, but I still didn't want to say it out loud. I put the phone back exactly where it was. I didn't want to trap her. I wanted to see if she'd offer anything on her own. She didn't. Over the next few days, I paid attention in a way I never had before. Not obsessively, quietly. I noticed how she angled her phone away from me on the couch. How she'd step into the hallway to answer calls she used to take right next to me. How she'd mention coworkers I knew, but never that one name, never that number. One evening, I casually asked, "Who do you talk to so much lately?" She didn't even look up. "Just work," she said, just like that. No elaboration. "Why?" I shrugged and said, "No reason." She nodded and said, "Okay." End of conversation. The phrase, "Why are you making this a thing?" hovered between us even though she didn't say it. The final piece came accidentally. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for a charger in her car. In the center console, under some receipts, was a parking slip. Not from her office, different part of town. Late evening. I checked the date. One of the nights she'd said she was working late. My first instinct was to put it back and pretend I hadn't seen it. That's how deep I was in denial. But then I thought, if this is nothing, it should explain itself. It didn't. It just sat there, small and damning. That was the moment something in me clicked. Not rage, not heartbreak. Clarity. I'm not crazy, I thought. I'm not insecure. This wasn't about jealousy. It was about reality. Too many things didn't line up. Too many half answers. Too many rehearsed phrases. Nothing is going on. You're overthinking. Please don't start this. Each one now sounded like a delay tactic, not the truth. I didn't confront her right away. I needed to hear her say it, or not say it. I needed to see how far she'd go to protect whatever this was, because at this point the details almost didn't matter anymore. The trust was already fractured. I just didn't know yet if she realized how loud the cracks had become.